NANI?
Oh, hello friend. Have something a bit different. Royal Military Police or Redcap. This is one of many exclusive figures Warlord Games has produced. This was available with a neat global campaign called Operation Critical Hit back in mid-2023. A fun little event creating a battlefront using maps and bits that look like they're from Axis and Allies, but really they were giving people a taste of the combined arms set. That lets you use land, air, and sea battles for your own campaign. In my interest of history, not looked into the shenanigans of MPs. At first glance, one would assume it's dealing with rowdy soldiers. I'm sure there are a few good Mad Lad tales to be had. The purpose today is going to be twofold. Document the usual painting experiment, but first something a bit new. Tidying up an unsightly mess. Not the model itself, it's actually a very good sculpt. One solid piece of white metal. Very detailed, heroic action man sten time. The thing about white metal is that, yes, it is metal and sturdy, though very weak and malleable under stress. We have some nice supports well hidden on the model, one on the stock and the second hidden between the body, arm, and the gun. Some might think these are flash and remove them. Don't. These are support structures preventing the weak point, that is the gun, from twisting and failing. As when white metal overstresses and gives way, well, I hope you're really good at sculpting with Greenstuff. The main issue I have is the built-in base. Anyone who's played wargaming knows what a base is, the thing you put the model on. Statistically, most people would be familiar with this black lifted kind used in Warhammer. Modern historicals are familiar with the Renedra flat greens. Old-timers perhaps plasticard and cardboard. If a bolt-action player, this flat and lift base. I prefer the lift. The challenge here is the one we are all familiar with seeing on green plastic army men, the pedestal base. Perhaps the oldest kind of base, very simple, built in to give the figure stability. Thing is, we want this to be on the desired 25mm round base for the game to fit in nicely with our other guys. And the attached base is rather large, unsightly, and I want it to go away. Now, with metal, I've seen a quick job where people glue the metal model to a plastic round and cover it with a thin layer of texture, and it looks bad. It's not enough to actually look like ground. It's just not right. It looks horrible. And we like models. We want them to look nice. So what if I told you that this model had a similar, if not larger, pedestal base? What did I do to achieve this? If you said cut it off, wrong. I recommend not doing that, as in a way it is a support for the metal, and pressure that would be required to take that off would likely warp the figure. The option is to hide it in plain sight. This requires prep time. Often cleaning the model can take as much time, if not longer, than painting. But I find it important, as even the most Brother Clarence of paint jobs look better without mold lines. My eyes are drawn to them every time like moth to a flame. Since the figure is metal, we need some files. These types can be bought in bulk online. Yes, they do appear to be similar, if not the same as the Army Painter ones, and they work great. Primarily, there are a large bit of gunk on the bottom we need to file down to get the model to stand properly. There's one mold line ring around the entire outside of the model, easy enough to file down and get looking sharp. For those who live dangerously, I do use a hobby knife. Yes, it is metal on metal. Caution is needed, as if it is made of Chinesium or you brute force it, chances are you may lose an eye. Most importantly, we want the bottom smoothed down and give it a nice bit of super glue to the plastic base. I always use the gel variant, as I find it makes me hate life less than with the runny variant. The next phase, we need some green stuff. Best part is, it doesn't even need to be all too fresh. You can take the kind of lumpy stale part that's usually in the middle, as we're gonna mold it as filler. Still mix it up and it gets that really unique Slimer green. Want to start placing the usual sausage shapes around the base. The main idea is to give it a form of a gentle taper, which is why I use the lip base, as it gives a millimeter lift to create a bit of an illusion. Don't need tools, but any kind of sculpting tool can help smooth and taper it down, blend it in a bit more of the pedestal base. I prefer the rubber tip ones as they're really choice and smooth to work with. Time for a little bit of the old texture mix. You don't need to add a lot, just enough to mask the green stuff. I prefer the Vallejo 200 milliliter bottle for about $10. It'll last a very long time. The color doesn't matter as I paint mine. What does matter is the texture. The earth is, well, very earthy. There's also a pumice or beach sand if you're into that. Really the only part I use wash on anymore. I do a series of dry brushes, a wash to blend it in. For an Easter egg, I generally use the colors of the uniform in some manner when painting the base. There's a neat trick I do. I keep the middle a tad darker and the outside lighter to form a fake shadow. And the great part is, if we do all this correctly, the eyesore pedestal base is gone. And from most viewpoints, the figure appears to be on fairly level ground. It can appear slightly taller in comparison to the other figures, though most of the metal figures are officers or important units, so standing out isn't too bad. It's far more subtle than standing on a tactical rock and showing everyone your weapon. Many such cases. That was exciting, but there's still more. I still have to paint it. Put in the description not only the timestamps, but a list of paints and abbreviation key. Start with the basics, since this is mostly a khaki-ish color. We shall use the legendary absolute unit of pre-shade. Primer, Black Brown Pro Acryl. I use an airbrush for this part. This primer really goes on well with it. Can use a brush. It has that slightly oily airbrush texture to it, so it may be a few brush coats for it to take properly. I've been playing around with some new brush types. The first time trying these synthetic Greenstuff World brushes, less than half the length of a standard brush with a plastic handle, very thin bristles, decent for detail work like eyes, and decent for the price/amount. Though whatever material it is made of holds more water than usual, so I have to give it a extra napkin dab where the paint may give a little watery smear speck. Base coat. Uniform and cap. Another legend in the field of khaki drab, German camo, medium brown. The Redcap. Armband lettering. Nocturnal Red. The gunmetal. Boots. Armband. Black. Leather cap strip. Hair, mustache, truncheon, cap badging, charred brown. Boot guards, braiding on chest, medium gray. Coming along nicely, but we've still got a little bit ways to go. Layers, uniform and cap, English uniform, Redcap, armband lettering, Scarlet Blood Red, gunmetal, boots, armband, dark sea green, hair, mustache, truncheon, Gorgon Brown, cap badging, yellow ochre, leather cap strip, leather brown, boot guards, braiding on chest, buff, and we could stop here. However, we must go deeper. Highlights. Uniform and cap, 50-50 mix of light brown and English uniform. Red cap, armband lettering, hot orange. Armband and boot, neutral gray. Gunmetal, blue-gray pale. Hair and mustache, 50-50 light brown and ochre yellow. Boot guards, braiding on chest and cap badging, ivory. Leather cap strip, 50-50 light brown, leather brown. Truncheon, old wood. And most people have their own ways of doing a variety of skin, but I like to play mine on my long path of being weaned off of Citadel products. It's hard to find good flesh since theirs were so dialed in, so let's try something a bit different. Base, tan, layer, beige red, possibly the best substitute for Cadian flesh I've come across. Highlight, highlight flesh. The bottom lip is a bit pronounced on this model, and I usually like to at least try to do eyebrows or lip when possible. And we can help pick it out by a subtle base of Nocturnal Red and then a thin layer of tan. Eyes, horizontal slash with any white, then a vertical slash of a black or brown. Try to keep both pupils slightly to a side, looking in the same direction to prevent that googly-eyed look. Then clean up any excess to fit the original socket. Well, at least as much as possible. Sometimes those eye sockets are really tiny and your eyes are going to be a little bit out of bounds. But it's fine. Overall, not too bad. Really like the flesh. Little practice on the non-metal metallics. A unique figure that I can't find a use for in-game outside of making him a makeshift officer to fill the ranks for 3rd edition.